Hello, hello, and welcome, good people of the world, to the Africam show, brought to you by explore.org. My name's Russell Gerber, back again for a lovely afternoon in the bush with all of our amazing cameras all over the southern African bushveld. And of course, coming to you live from all our locations across South Africa. Thank you for joining us. And as always, we'll be going through whatever comes on down on the live cameras to say hello to us, or what it's already hanging around, like this lovely grey heron. But if you have anything on your mind, any questions that you would like to pop out to us, please feel free to do so, as our heron gets totally zen on us by the waterhole here. I'm sure you yoga fans across the world could explain what sort of pose that is for me, but he does look very zen. We lost our picture there briefly. We've just popped over to Willifants River. Who have we got lurking behind our ficus there? Is that a couple of bushbuck lurking in the foliage, or perhaps impala? It's hard to see. I would probably put my money on impala. They're fairly common in these parts. But welcome one and all to the show. And a couple of hellos out there. Gemma, welcome. Thank you for joining us. All the way from New Jersey, USA. Saski Brenda, good day. Thank you for joining us. And she has a question. Let's see what she says here. That a little question about Tembe. Of course, our camera at Tembe, where we've had quite a lot of action with some of our resident lions hanging about. F70 being the female we commonly see there, who has a collar, and two of her offspring. And Saski Brenda asks that a big male, M179, who we think is the dominant male of the area, approached F70, we think is a lactating female. I'm not sure if she still is, but she may well be. She asks, does the young male greedy, who is not M179's offspring, have anything to worry about with M179 being around? And the answer is absolutely. M179, that big male in that area, will very seldom tolerate the presence of a young sub-adult male, especially one approaching adulthood very quickly, even if it is his own offspring. And since we think greedy is not of M179's progeny, he will most certainly have a problem and could run into a fight with that big male if he's not careful. Male cats, the big male cats, James Henry and I had a chat about this on our show last week, that often the males are a little bit more hesitant to leave mom. Obviously in the world of lionesses will often stay together their whole life with their mother. And the males will put off leaving as long as he can. If there are no other males in the area whatsoever, it is often known that the big male son will hang around with the females and sometimes start mating with, or attempt mating with, his sister, sisters, and other related females, and even his mother, and can often lead to some inbreeding within lions, which they can tolerate to a degree. I've heard roughly sort of 3 or 4 generations before you start seeing any real direct impacts, but of course it does weaken that gene pool. And so the natural way that lions in the wild get around that is, of course, big males will chase off the younger males, and those young males have to establish their own territory. So a good first up question, pretty complicated stuff, but that's generally how it goes. And you can see here at Olifants, a little baboon troop frolicking under the trees. But thank you for your question, Sasky Brenda. I hope that answers your question. And then, who else is out there? Andy also asks about the lions. Andy asks, before a male and female lion start mating, is it the male or the female who picks his or her mating partner? Good question, Andy. So as I said, you'll have a dominant male or sometimes dominant males in a certain area. Often the males who are in charge of a pride together are known as a coalition of males. Often they are brothers or related to each other one way or another. Sometimes not, just of a similar age. But even then, one of them will be slightly more dominant. And the female, in that case, if she is in heat or in estrus, she will mate with both of the males, or however many dominant males there are, to give the impression that the whatever cubs come from that mating are in fact the offspring of any one of those males. But she will usually mate more with the most dominant male and will likely then fall pregnant from that male. So to answer your question, it's very much the female who picks the male. And but in a way, the males fight for dominance, and once they have that dominance and are in charge of a pride, they of course get first option as the males to be chosen. So that's pretty much how it works in the Lion Kingdom. OMG 23's out there from Kalamazoo. Hello, hello. Aussie Jan, back again joining us. Sorry it took so long for me to reply to you on Facebook, Aussie Jan. But I hope that did answer your question about the young crocodile offspring that we noted, or that she noted on the cameras at Tau, which is always very interesting. Here we are at Tau now, looking at our springbok and impala. Thank you for your questions on the lions. We're diving right into the lion questions today. They are very interesting, and as I said, we've seen quite a lot of them around at Tembe recently. But of course they pop up all over the show. You never know where they might come from. Even here at Tau, we've had some great lion excitement in the past. And Kathy Barton back again. Hello, Kathy. Welcome, welcome. And Betty from North Dakota also, thank you for joining us. And who else? Pounce as well, in hot and steamy Florida. Yeah, I'm sure it is this time of year already. Who else we got? Dawn Hamilton, South Carolina. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Lovely to have you with us as we check out the plethora of animals at Tau. But we've just crossed over to Skakusa now. And that, I'm sure many of you can guess what that large mammal is hanging out in the river. And of course, one of Africa's big five, as I'm sure many of you know, also happens to be on the 100 Rand bill in South Africa. Not worth as much as it used to be, but still nice to have a couple of buffaloes in your wallet. But this is very common behavior for the buff. It seems we just lost a little bit of picture there. We've had a lot of storms around in the afternoon, all over our bush locations, and that can really play havoc with the signal we get from the cameras. So we've just left Kruger now. That's Kakuza, Shalati, and we've moved back to Tau, where our little heron is sneaking into the water. I don't know if it's seen something or if it's just thought it's seen something. Potential meal, perhaps. I do love how delicately they walk through the water for any potential meal. You have to be very careful if you have to hunt for every morsel. Doesn't seem like he's in any luck over there. Oh, wait. See, now this is the great trouble with watching animals hunting live and on camera. They are extremely patient. Certainly, I am far less patient and expect action immediately, especially when I say they are about to do something. But no, for now, we're just checking things out at the waterhole. And let's see if we got any other questions. Pounce asked, domestic cats can have more than one father to their one litter. Is this true of lions? Pounce, another good question. And another lion question. Hopefully all this talk of lions will get them to pop in for us live on the show today. So, Pounce, as far as I know, yes, you can have more than one father to one litter. It's quite rare in the animal kingdom, but it does happen from time to time. I've certainly heard of it happening. I don't think it's very common in the case of lions. I'd have to do a little bit more research on that. But as far as I know, it is possible, but it's not a very common occurrence in the world of lions. And now back again to Olifants, where we're on the closer side of the river, where we do indeed have a bushbuck hanging out having a snack right under the camera. Bushbuck, easily one of the most pretty little antelope species we get down here, and incredibly widespread across South Africa, all the way down into the Eastern Cape where I grew up. And for the most part, when we did see little antelope out in the wild areas of the Eastern Cape, this was the most regularly seen. But out on safari, don't see them quite as often. They tend to hang out along the edge of the river, or rivers, and thicker bush, as their name would suggest. And they're not always terribly easy to find. It's always a nice little treat to see a bushbuck around. And this one, as I said, having a snack on some fresh grass, normally browses. I tend to prefer leaves. It's certainly far more tolerant of leaves, but all of these herbivores will have their favorites. And in many areas, grazing is often far more nutritious than the browsing. So when they get the chance, they will absolutely have a graze on some grass. Nice to see this one looking so relaxed on the camera. And we got another question. OMG23 says we haven't seen Monty at Rosie's lately. That's true, OMG. I haven't seen him around there, or her around there. For those of you who don't know, Monty, of course, was the beautiful southern African python, or African rock python, that was that had turned Rosie's into a KFC takeaway for pythons. He managed to take out a number of bird species that landed on the branch he was resting on, and we wondered how long he was going to hang about. And I think since he's had so much success there, it may continue for a while. As we have a look at the warthog doing what warthogs do best, wallowing in the mud, one of the great wallowers of Africa, along with our buffalo that we saw earlier. Rhino is also terribly fond of a wallow. And in the world of carnivores, I have to say, hyenas are quite fond of a wallow as well. On a very hot day, if you're near to a hyena den, it's very common to see, especially a couple of the old moms hanging out in the water up to their neck, just cooling down in the heat of the day. They've disappeared now. I think this is our nomad cam that we were on. We've just crossed back over to Woolly Funds since our warthogs have disappeared to look at our very pretty little bushbuck. Because Anna Emerson asks, do bushbuck travel in herds? Well, Anna, as you can see here, it's not uncommon for them to be on their own. Often you'll see males on their own. More often than not, you'll see females with a few other females around them. Generally small herds if they are traveling in a herd. Now the females, if you're wondering, are quite easy to tell apart from the males. A slightly different coloration on their body, with the males having a slightly more chocolate brown color and a little white mane almost that runs down their neck and spine. But the easiest thing is, of course, the horns. The males have horns and the girls don't, which is very common in the Tragelaphus genus. That includes kudu, of course. So as I say, generally you'll see them singly, occasionally in pairs. And if they are together, normally people would consider them as being in loosely knit groups. So they're quite happy to be on their own. Another reason why it's sometimes quite difficult to see them. But thank you for your question, Anna. Hope that answers your query on bushbuck. If you were wondering, they're actually not very territorial either. In general, the way the males kind of separate themselves into a hierarchy is by age. The older you are, the more dominant you are. Not so for humans. As I say, always nice watching bushbucks and bushbuck. So relaxed and so nicely on camera, nice and close for us as well. And who else we got another question from? Caitlin. Is it possible that the Olifants River male leopard that was at Rosie's is the father of the Rosie's female cub? We saw this male leopard at Rosie's yesterday. Good question, Caitlin. All of our evidence so far suggests that he would be the father. He seems to be the biggest and most commonly seen male we get in the area. There's occasionally a younger one that we've spotted who we think may have been a previous son or a young male trying to find a territory, only to discover that that big Olifants River male has made this his home. So the only way to truly tell is if we happen to witness the mating of that male with the Rosie's female, or of course a genetic test. It's very hard to tell, but from a behavioral point of view, that seems the most likely solution, or answer, should I say. But it was really nice to see him again. We haven't seen him for a while, as far as I remember. And I saw the video you were chatting about this morning. So really nice to have him back again. When we do see him around Rosie's, it's not uncommon that we see him walking this very path we're looking at now at Olifants in the evening. So keep an eye out tonight. Generally, as the sun goes down, he likes to use this pathway as part of his patrol. And every now and again, we'll see him taking a saunter down here, scent marking as he goes. Sometimes even giving that territorial call that leopards are famous for. The almost sawing sound that elephants that leopards make as they call out. As is the intro in our wonderful show, if you noticed. So yeah, keep an eye out for that leopard. You never know what we might get being a live show. Maybe it'll show up and make a meal of our beautiful bushbuck. I hope not, although it would be exciting. But Anna Emerson asks, what is the lifespan of a bushbuck? They are gorgeous, I agree. Well, if they're taken by a leopard, significantly shorter. But generally, the lifespan of a bushbuck in the wild, about 8 or 9 years. Some people claim around 12 years. In the wild, in captivity, as usual, they can live much longer, perhaps 15 or 16 years. Thank you for your question, Anna. And then we've got another question too. I cannot pronounce that name, I'm afraid. I will not even attempt it, but thank you for your question. And the question is, does this one appear pregnant to you normally? When do the bushbuck give birth? She does look quite round in the belly. I was noticing that as well in the beginning of the show. But I fear our angle also might be a bit misleading. It could also just be her rib cage. But she may be. They can give birth any time of year, across the country, certainly. There are some areas where you see some peaks, and for the most part, the peak for our browsing antelope tends to be about this time of year, with the onset of rains and heavy rains. So you never know, she may well be pregnant. It wouldn't surprise me if you watched long enough. We'd certainly be able to make sure, but I think you're right. She does look really round in the tummy and could well be a little pregnant bushbuck. Have a gestation of around 4 months or so. Sorry, not 4 months, about 6 months, about 180 days, I think. After about 4 months after she gives birth, that youngster will start following her around. They tend to keep them in, or have them in very dense cover when they do give birth, and then will keep them hidden as long as they can while they nurse. But yeah, a lot more to the bushbuck than meets the eye. Lovely question. Thank you very much. Why don't we head over to Katmai? I think we had a visitor there very recently. See if he's still hanging about. Now, a few moments ago, there was a large pachyderm hanging out here, I'm told. And I think if you listen carefully, you can hear that fellow. It seems that our large pachyderm, likely around 4 to 5 tons of elephant, is currently hidden behind that bush. Now, isn't that hard to believe that an entire animal that size can disappear like that? But that is the wonder of nature and the glory of live shows. The animals don't cooperate as much as we would like. So let's go over to Tao with a lovely little herd of zebra. Looks like they're just arriving for an afternoon drink at the waterhole. And there really has been a deluge of rain around the northern parts of South Africa in the last week or so. Some very good rains, I think, in Kruger also last night. So always nice to see, with what is almost always a very dry winter ahead for these animals. But with so much grazing around, you can see the diversity at Tau. Gorgeous sight of plains zebra having a drink in the fading sunlight. A little bachelor herd of impala behind them, and behind the impala, a warthog sneaking off into the long grass. And a couple of baboons calling in the background. Oh, something gave our zebra a fright. Now let's pop back to Katmai quickly. I think our pachyderm friend has popped out. Well, there he is. There's a piece of an elephant. That is indeed an elephant, I promise. Making a mess. You can see some mud flying in the background. And the occasional trunk sneaking through the bushes there. And on that gorgeous pachyderm backside, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions today. Always a pleasure chatting and interacting with you. Busy time on the cameras today. Lots of animals around. Looks like this fellow is a little camera shy, making his way off into the distance. But thank you all once again for joining us. Great pleasure having you with us on the show. Enjoy the rest of your morning or evening, wherever you're watching us in the world. We'll be back again, the same time again next week for the Africam show. Always live and always wild, so join us then. Until then, from all of us here in the Africam team, cheers for now.